Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, and mainly dear friends. I'm really pleased to welcome you to this presentation of the meeting for friendship amongst peoples. This is a very important meeting that every year is taking place since 1980 in the city of Rimini. Rimini, for sure, for those who love cinema, is a very well-known city because it has been the place where Federico Fellini has shot many of his famous movies. But more and more is becoming a place that everybody remembers for hosting one of the most inspiring initiatives in the promotion of understanding among peoples of different cultures and religions. Today we have the organizer of the Rimini meeting, and they will explain us the nature, the purpose of this initiative. Let me just underline some of the things that I think are very important regarding this initiative. First of all, dialogue, things that are, of course, very much relevant to what we do here at the UN. The first aspect is dialogue. We are here for that. We are here at the United Nations. We have dialogue every day. Is our daily bread, and it's very also important to see how outside of this building dialogue is promoted among people of different ideas, religions, and countries. Friendship is also another very important feature of this initiative that needs to be underlined. I think that the General Assembly has just approved a resolution on friendship. The 30th of July is the International Day of Friendship. Something that has been promoted by Paraguay very recently. It just underlines how the idea of friendship still remains very, very much important. Now, before proceeding to the presentation, I think that our friends here will be much cleverer than me in describing all the feature of this initiative. I think it's important to underline also one very important aspect, and the aspect of volunteers. This initiative is taking place because many young people every year work to make this big initiative that is calling 1,000 people in Rimini possible, and this is because they believe this. Young people that give their own time for making this initiative possible, because they believe in these ideas. They believe to make this event possible. This year, the Rimini meeting has a title which is very intriguing for me, and I'm sure that our friends here will explain the meaning of what they have in mind. The title of the Rimini meeting is "And Existence Becomes an Immense Certainty." When I've read this title, I thought that, well, this is like a Japanese haiku poem, something that opens your mind to different interpretation and allows you to start thinking. In a way, it's true, but I'm sure that our friends will give us the reason behind this title. Now, before giving the floor, I think that we have a 4 minutes movie that probably will give us an idea of the Rimini meeting. So let's start with this movie, and then we'll give the floor to our friends and we'll introduce them to you.
It's at the end of the 1970s. A group of friends sharing the Christian experience were overcome by the desire to meet, to know, and to bring to Rimini all that was lovely and good in the culture of the time.
I volontari sono più di 3.000 durante la settimana del meeting, sono stati circa 700 durante queste settimane di allestimento, vengono da tutto il mondo.
Cosenza,
Milano, Torino,
Genova,
Benevento,
Bari,
Taiwan,
Sicilia,
Kazakistan,
Carrate Brianza, Camerun.
Thus it was that in 1980, the first edition of the Meeting for Friendship Amongst Peoples was held. An encounter of people of different faiths and cultures, a place to build peace, harmony, and friendship amongst peoples with the desire to know and to make known the world. A network of encounters borders between people sharing a passion for the truth and the good. Great political figures, managers of the economy, representatives of religions and cultures, intellectuals, artists, sports personalities, and protagonists of the world scene have all been meeting in Rimini. The Rimini meeting became the place where culture is expressed as experience.
Mi piace la gente del meeting, mi piace l'entusiasmo che c'è.
Tutto l'entusiasmo di tutti questi giovani.
Взаимопонимание.
Qui si vede questa amicizia.
Lo spirito dei giovani.
Very amazing.
Niente di insegnamento per il resto dell'anno.
Was born the most attended cultural festival in the world, with almost 800 visitors coming from 20 countries, 130 conferences, 350 speakers, 8 exhibitions, 35 performances, 10 sporting events involving an area of 170,000 square meters, 1,000 accredited journalists, and over 200 partners and sponsors. Is a great cultural event, a huge party, a place where, as John Paul II said during his visit in 1982, a civilization is born from truth and love.
Al meeting si guadagna una cosa veramente che è un valore infinito, che è il calore umano e l'armonia, la familiarità che esiste dentro del meeting di tutti noi qua.
Vorrei trovare un altro senso di amicizia diversa qui.
Io ho fatto una domanda da solo e dico: perché tutta questa gente vuole venire qua? Per cosa? No? Sicuro sarà qualcosa di importante da scoprire.
I think that the images sometimes are much more powerful than words are able to explain much better what we are referring to. Now I want to give the floor to Emilia Guarnieri. You have seen her in this movie at the beginning. Emilia Guarnieri, she's the president of the Meeting for Friendship Amongst Peoples, so she will introduce this presentation. And after Emilia Guarnieri, we have two other friends of the meeting with us. One is Professor Joseph Weiler on my right, and on my left is Professor Will Farouk from Egypt. Professor Weiler is from the New York University, and Professor Will Farouk is from the American University in Cairo. Now I give the floor to Professoress Emilia Guarnieri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Bernardini. Thank Ambassador Ragaglini, who allowed us to be here. Because for us today, for me, for all of us of the meeting, it is a great honor and a great emotion to be here at the UN to talk about an adventure that has been going on for 32 years and to which various people here dedicate work, energy, creativity, time. And it is very moving for us to be here in a place that, as you were called, by its very nature and vocation, works to develop friendship among people and nations. The word friendship creates this consonance because what we're talking about today, and as the video showed, it is organized by the Foundation Meeting for Friendship Among Peoples. Let me give you a few statistics. The Meeting for Friendship Among Peoples was born in 1980 in Italy, in Rimini. Rimini is located on the Adriatic Sea, facing the Balkans. At that time, there were no more than 120,000 inhabitants in Rimini. It's a city that was destroyed in the war and reconstructed after the war, confirming its vocation for tourism and for welcoming people, and immediately becoming one of the best-known beach localities of our peninsula. In this way, the city was reconstructed very quickly, also because of the initiative and the risk-taking and enterprising spirit that the people of Rimini have always had. It is a city with an international vocation that had important Congress censors, and in a city there was a group of us, a group of friends among between the ages of 30 and 4. We were all young professionals with families of our own, friends because we grew up together in the Christian experience of communion and liberation, the movement founded by Don Giussani, which exists more than 70 countries of the world today. We are those who had lived the utopias of 1968 and experienced the dreams of a better future that instead produced only disappointment and often violence. We came out of this experience certain of one thing, however, certain that our small experience of Christian friendship filled our life with meaning and with the desire to build. And above all, this experience was a reality that was concrete and present, not a dream to be realized in the future, not a utopia. There were themes that filled us with passion, that the theme of peace, of human rights, of civil freedoms. We're talking late 1960s, early 1970s, a desire to build a world, a better world, and a better society. Curiosity, a great curiosity to meet that, to know what was happening in the world, and that was an interesting experience. This curiosity was born from the fact that, unlike today, 30 years ago, communication and familiarity with the vast world was much more difficult than it is today. We had a taste for beauty, an enthusiasm for knowledge, and we were animated by the certainty that friendship between peoples is possible. Multiculturalism was a distant phenomenon in those years, at least in Italy. But what was already clear was that on the horizon, a historic reality was appearing in which people of different races, faiths, and cultures would be called upon to live together. On the other hand, we were fascinated by the idea of diversity. The richness of other traditions filled us with curiosity. We wanted to see if it was possible to meet, and we wanted to know what we could meet about. We had some resources at our disposal. We had international friendships that ranged from the world of the Russian dissidents to the trade union and movements of South America. We had ties with publishing houses that publish anthologies of art, histories of literature. And we asked ourselves, we wondered, how could we how could we draw on these resources and these relationships? We had a great desire and great enthusiasm and attempted to give shape to this desire and to this enthusiasm. The meeting was born as an attempt to give shape to this. We felt a little different from many Catholics of the period and from many Catholics of today as well. With Don Giussani, we felt that we saw Christianity as human friendship rather than a series of regulations. We felt like the first Christian communities that did not have abstract ideology or principle to defend, but simply a human experience to live and through which to meet anyone. We had great sympathy toward all expressions, compassion toward every expression of humankind. All human beings have the same heart and the same desire for happiness, and convinced that this friendship could make humankind better. All of these factors together came together one night around a pizza, as is often the case in Italy, when the vocation for hospitality of our land and our passion for meeting with other people created a spark, the spark of having a meeting on friendship among peoples. And this, as it was at the end of the summer of 1979. The rest is a history of the past 32 years, in which the meeting grew and built international relations, as well as collaborations with the most important social, cultural institutions of the world. Tonight is certainly the most significant in this perspective. This presentation was preceded by presentations in Paris at the headquarters of UNESCO's, and before that at the Italian Cultural Institute in Moscow, at the State University of Moscow in Cairo with our friend Wael at the University of Cairo, at the Italian Embassy in Washington, and also here in New York. We had the pleasure to meet. Our experience in 2010 at the New York Encounter, the annual conference organized by the Crossroads Cultural Center, with whom we have a deep friendship. Many friends from Crossroads are here tonight as well. We have had exhibitions, many exhibitions, collaborating with the Museum of Man in Paris, with the Louvre, with the British Museum of London, with the Institute of Anthropology of Mexico City, and with the Metropolitan Museum of New York, as well as with Israeli Antiquities. When we had an exhibit on the historic origins of Christianity, we have stable relationships with the Blair Foundation, with FIES, with the Templeton Foundation, and with the School of Visual Art. But what is the meeting? The video demonstrated this to a certain extent. What happens in 1 week in a space which, as you saw, consists of various elements and different factors, conference rooms, dormitories, places for children, 170,000 square meters altogether, where in 7 days we have more than 800,000 people of the most diverse nationalities. The meeting is, first of all, a meeting point. Every year, more than 350 speakers are there, including Eugene Ionesco. Just to give you an idea of the ideas of the people we have had, some in the video: Chaim Potok, Tarkovsky, Helmut Kohl, John Paul II, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, Lech Wałęsa, Cardinal Ratzinger when he was still a cardinal, Marchione, Michelin, Marianne Glandon, Tony Blair, Judge Alito, Professor Pellegrino, Carlo Rubbia, Abdus Salam, Boutros Ghali before he was Secretary General, Jérôme Lejeune, and our professor friends here today, Joseph Weiler and Farouk Weil, were also authoritative lecturers at the meeting in different years. 2 presidents of the Italian Republic were there. President Napolitano will have the keynote address this year. Various heads and representatives of European institutions and Italian ministers of different grammars, governments. Minister Frattini will participate in the meeting. Last year, Barroso, the President of the European Commission, participated, as well as Mary McAllister, President of Ireland. Many artists have come to the meeting. Martha Graham made one of her last public appearances at Rimini with her dance school. Jose Carreras, Ennio Morricone, Riccardo Muti, the painter William Congdon. But there are also conferences, shows, sports. But the main thing is that there is a genuine experience of meeting among people, a real encounter, which generates mutual sympathy and friendship. People from different cultures develop mutual respect for each other's history, traditions, and identity. This meeting also includes the tens of thousands of people who participate, because the meeting is a popular reality attended by families, young people, adults, a place of coexistence where managers such as academics, scientists, artists, witnesses of significant experiences, and politicians can communicate the positive wealth of the human adventure. That human beings create, work, live is always an adventure, and it testifies to a search for a positive spirit, a taste, a desire to build, a desire for the good and for the beautiful, and this is the desire that we all share. We often call the meeting, to describe the meeting, we often say we have invested in the human heart. I was very struck by a sentence of John Paul II in 1995 on the occasion of his visit to the UN, when he said, "We must not have fear of humanity." And in that same speech, he invited everyone to undertake a common effort to construct a civilization of love, underlining that the soul of the civilization of love is the culture of freedom. And John Paul II, at the meeting, the Rimini meeting in 1982, used the same words: build the civilization of truth and of love. I don't believe that these consonances are accidental. The meeting is certainly a small reality, but we too feel that we are described in this task of building a civilization of love, because we feel that we are defined by that same trust in humankind that John Paul II talked about. And this trust in humanity is not a utopia that is unreachable for those who do not pay attention to violence, to the wars, to the evil that is around and inside of us. But in the everyday life, and in the past 20 years of the meeting, we have seen much good come out. Many examples of beauty, of solidarity, of grandeur, of hope, of construction, of labor. We have seen Muslims embrace Christians and dance, and Jews and dance together. We have seen prisoners from maximum security prisons come and talk about their own process of change. And we have heard at the end of the meeting people say, "I can't wait until I go back to prison to talk with my prison mates about what I have seen." These are meetings that document that the human heart is capable of experiencing the good and the beautiful, and also spending his or her life to build it. At the meeting, as the ambassador said, there is a phenomenon that shows this positive spirit. I'm talking about the volunteers, 4,000 people from various countries who work for free to build and realize this meeting. Students, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, factory workers, teachers, people of every social class and age. Work and the presence of these people is what builds this meeting. They are the ones who, through their volunteer spirit, not only make it possible for everything to work and to actually be in place, but above all, they create the humane climate of a welcome, of a respect, of human values that always amazes those who come to the meeting. Chaim Potok in Rimini said, I've said about Rimini that I find a great openness, a great welcome. The warmth and the depth of the welcome made me happy. because the volunteers are the first person that anyone who comes to the meeting is going to see, and it is inevitable to wonder why. Why are they doing this? Then you realize that behind everything, there's a great ideal that inspires them to do so. So you can also see that one of the dogmas is so much relativist culture, where there is a strong identity there cannot be an encounter, is a false dogma. The meeting shows exactly the opposite. A strong, explicit identity that becomes the place and the occasion for people, for many people, to meet. The ambassador referred to the title of the next meeting, because every year the meeting has a title, an evocative title, around which the entire conference takes place. This year, the title is, "And Existence Becomes an Immense Certainty." We wish to ask ourselves this question: is there such a thing as a certainty which serves as a starting point for all of human life? Is it not perhaps true that the human being, because of the fact that he or she exists and is certain of him or herself and is certain of desire and is certain of existing, is it possible to achieve a certainty relative to reality, relative to the knowledge of things? This is the question we are asking. The other great dogma of today's culture, relativism, is that it is not possible to achieve certainty. This year's meeting wishes to launch this challenge, and with this question, all the lecturers will have to come to terms. I finally wanted to mention some themes that have been discussed in the past few years. The experience of development, of assistance, of helping the human and economic development of peoples, the collaboration, the possibility of dialogue, openness to the unexpected. Professional careers have also been built, because many people that work to create the meeting then become people who, on the strength of this experience, develop new professions, learn how to work, learn how to build social works and entrepreneurial pursuits. All of those who have come to the meeting have encountered in the meeting a formative and educational experience, and sometimes also an experience of change. I would not presume to say this if not for the fact that so many greats have said this. One who speaks for all, the great playwright Eugene Ionesco, who came in '87, who said, "If I had been able to live a little bit longer, perhaps my life would have changed. No more violence, no more hatred. Only a friendly collaboration, a deep understanding among people of goodwill." The first that know how much good they've received from the meeting, how much free wealth that was completely inconceivable and unexpected is drawn from the meeting. We are the first to realize this, the first who have done this, and all of those who over the years have become parts of this adventure. We know, and we are profoundly grateful for this, how much good we have received, what intelligence of reality we have drawn from this, and what growth and what personal change has happened to us and continues to happen to us through this experience, including the experience of this evening. And for the fact that you were here, I thank you also for this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that really I believe that it is necessary to congratulate you because you have described this incredible experience, this journey that started in 1979 with a group of friends and has been growing to become such a big initiative and experience. Basically, more and more we hear about the meeting in Rimini, more and more we understand that it's something that you have to be there to understand how rich can be that experience, being with others, talking, discussing, and having that wonderful experience of spending some days with people from other countries, other ideas, other religions. The meeting this year, I think it's worth recalling, is taking place from August 21st to August 27th. I think it's necessary that we remind which are the dates of the meeting in Rimini. Now we have, I think, some friends that have been in Rimini, as Professoressa Guarnieri has just told us, and I will be more than happy to tell us what has been their own experience. So we'll start with Professor Weiler from the New York University. Professor.
Thank you very much. So this is how I would like to start. I have 5 children, and I travel a lot around the world for my work. And they have often asked me, if you had to choose for us the 5 or 6 or 7 most beautiful places that we absolutely must make sure that in our life we get to see in the world, what would they be? Try it out. It's a kind of interesting parlor game. And I don't know, would it be the pyramids, Victoria Falls, Angkor Wat, Paris, of course. It's, we all share a certain sort of aesthetic appreciation, and we can think of those great places of beauty that really we would not want our children to live on this earth without seeing them. Now, it becomes more difficult if they will ask me, not places of beauty, but places where one experiences the human spirit soaring. In other words, where it's not just beauty and nature, but the human condition comes in. That's more difficult. Is it Muti conducting at La Scala? Is it the General Assembly here in the United Nations in the fall? It really is quite a phenomenal event when you experience it for the first time. I know that most people in this room, it's banal, but there is something quite unique about it. Is it Prime Minister's question time in the British Parliament? There is also something very extraordinary about that. It's more difficult to put that list together. Where do we really experience something about the human condition, the soaring of the soul? And for me, unquestionably, the meeting in Rimini would be such an event. I would unequivocally say that if you manage to bribe her or to persuade her or somehow get yourself invited to participate, to be present at the meeting in Rimini, you are in for a shock, and you are in for an experience which is unlike really any comparable experience that you've had. So first, very quickly, let me try and describe the shock and the experience. You have to imagine a huge fair, I don't know, like Comdeck, like, I don't know, the Zurich automobile exhibition, which is held once a year, on a gigantic scale. The number of people who go through the turnstiles in that 1 week in Rimini is around 800,000 people. But they're not going to look at automobiles or at yachts or at the latest electronic wizardry. It's all about culture. It's a cultural fair which somehow manages to attract 800,000 presences. What do they see there? So there are a few celebrities, there are heads of state and government, ministers, parliamentarians from countries as diverse as Egypt or Brazil, the United States and Hungary, Nobel Prize scientists, authors, musicians, actors, theologians, philosophers. It's not the usual kind of thing that you associate with a mass event which attracts 800,000 people. Usually that's the kind of stuff you see when there's a rock concert, when there's a kind of music happening. But this is culture. Rimini is unique in another way. We often think in this world of ours that religion has become a source of conflict, of strife, of combat among peoples, and it often is. And therefore, very often, when we bring people together from different cultures, different continents, different countries, we do what my mother taught me when I was young. At the dinner table, you don't talk about sex, politics, and religion. And then everybody could be happy. Rimini actually takes religion very seriously, but it uses religion as a platform for bringing people together, for friendship, for dialogue, rather than as a source of strife and conflict. How exactly they do it, I'm not so sure, but it really happens. So it's the kind of place where you will see quite regularly a panel with a priest, a rabbi, and a Qadi. That's not a joke, or the beginning of a joke. A communist, a liberal, a Christian Democrat, a Palestinian and Israeli, can you believe that? Catholics and Muslims. It's the normal occurrence of Rimini. But it's not just about politics. It's not just people coming to see the lion or the wolf cavorting with the sheep, so to speak. You go to Rimini to hear an insightful lecture about Beethoven, to witness a really profound exhibition about the beginning of time or the creation of the world or the latest achievements in astronomy. I hope you're getting the picture. This is really unlike any other event that I know that exists anywhere else. It's very mediatic. The press are there, the television are there. What happens there when somebody burps, it's on the main news on Italian television. But what gives it really its specificity and particularity is that huge presence of people who are coming to experience culture, who are living this kind of amicizia fra I popoli, friendship among peoples. In some sense, I know this will sound a horrible cliche, it's a United Nations of culture. It's a general assembly around which people which normally might even see each other through the sights of a gun come to share in a cultural asset and celebrate the human spirit. What accounts for the success of Rimini? I've often wondered about it. I've also wondered why they keep inviting me. But please go on. So I've often wondered what accounts for the success of Rimini? What makes it that so many hundreds of thousands of people go there? And not only that, that when they invite these interesting people, artists, politicians, you know, whether it's a Tony Blair or some cardinal or a foreign minister, they usually consult with their handlers and they say, oh, Rimini, you ought to accept the invitation. So it's a kind of success. So what accounts for the success? I have the following factors. First of all, what I've said until now, there really is something unique. I have been at Rimini and spoken to a room with 5,000 people in the auditorium and countless other watching it on a webcast, both in Rimini itself and beyond, and we were talking about a book. When is the last time that you've had 5,000 people in an auditorium be willing to listen for 45 minutes to a presentation about a book, and not a science fiction book? It's quite special. There's intellectual openness. Make no mistake. This is an event organized by the most Catholic of Catholics. There's no squeamishness about that and no squishiness about that. Comunione e Liberazione is a very Catholic organization. They're proud of it, which I like in a way. But there's something, what is so special is the intellectual openness. Even though it is organized by a really committed Catholic organization, you will see a commitment to reason, dialogue. Their motto is, I'm inventing a motto for you. It is reason and persuasion. They are not afraid of exposing their adherents to the most radical, contrasting, different, challenging points of view. As I said, I've been myself on a panel. You know, I'm an observant Jew. I deny some of the most basic credos of the people who organized the Rimini meeting. Not just I don't believe in it, I deny it. And yet there I am, a welcome guest. And next to me might be a communist minister who denies it in a different way. But there he is, with a different type of challenge. So there's a kind of open and intellectual commitment which gives confidence. When you're invited and you go to Rimini, you know that you're not being manipulated, that you're really invited to speak your mind, to give your point of view, to say what's on your mind. And that's part of their commitment. The third thing that makes it extremely attractive is not the Tony Blairs and Finkelkrauts and even some distinguished and venerable cardinal. It's life, youth, family, thousands of strollers, young couples. There's a kind of infectiousness about the spirit. It's not, you know, even if you go to Disneyland at 4 o'clock of the afternoon, you see tired faces. We've had enough. You don't quite get that feeling at the Rimini meeting. There's really a vibrancy and a kind of transgenerational spirit that brings it to life. There's a happiness there. There are also disappointments, but essentially this is a very life-affirming experience. And the fourth factor is gravitas. It's never frivolous. It's never about ratings. It's never about crowd pleasing. When they decide on their program, when they decide on what the exhibitions will be, when they decide on the various encounters, it's extraordinary gravitas. It's the most pressing issues on our agenda: political, cultural, social, economic. I've been invited to a panel at the next meeting, the theme of which is, what is our duty towards migrants and what are the duties of migrants towards us, towards the host country? It's hard to think of a more grave issue on not only the European agenda, but the agenda of so many countries in the world. And with a really interesting bunch of people who are not going to agree on how we should articulate our duty towards migrant and what are the duties of migrants towards us. Even that second question is one that we often don't ask because it's a little bit politically incorrect. Rimini is wonderfully politically incorrect, and it achieves that because of the gravitas. Finally, it's selflessness, and the ambassador mentioned this before. They do this on a shoestring. They do it on a shoestring because there are 5,000 volunteers which just lift the whole operation. They do it with grace. I often tease them and I say, how can the Italians manage such a Swiss affair when it comes to the precision and the efficiency of the organization? Is that okay, Ambassador? You're not going to make me persona non grata?
You're not the first one to be surprised about these things in Italy.
I've always said about Italy, the things they want to do well, they do better than everybody else. But they have sometimes a different sense of priorities. The reason they manage to do this so efficiently, so well organized, is because of that spirit of selflessness. When you have 5,000 volunteers who really lift the whole operation, it works very well. So the meeting is a phenomenon which is outside the usual experience of the United Nations and international politics. It's not an NGO. It has no policy agenda. It's not lobbying for an outcome. It hasn't got some policy objective they're trying to achieve. It's not about persuading people to think the way they think. It's about the human experience. It is realization at the private level of the deepest ideals of the UN. United Nations, United Peoples. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I think they have given a very bright presentation and clear ideas of the atmosphere. Let me say that the end of your intervention was a relief for many of us here. We understand that you have not to negotiate any document in Rimini. That makes life more attractive for all diplomats who will wish to go to Rimini. They have to concentrate on dialogue and not on words and documents. I think that is also one aspect that is very important, and I like that you have underlined, because I was looking to the young kids that are with us here, the fact that you are making reference to the fact that families are there, people are going there not because in a professional way, keeping the families at home, but they are going to Rimini along with their own wives or husbands and kids. So everybody can have this experience in a different way, but they live all together these days.
Look how much progress we've made in the world. I'm sure that 30 years ago you'd say they go there with their wives and children. But today we say they go there with their wives or husbands and their children. Huh? Progress.
Well, we need to be politically correct here. You know? Good. Now I have another friend that is going to tell us about his experience. Is Professor Wael Farouk. I think he comes from Egypt. He was born in Cairo, and I think he's going to tell us also how Rimini has reached in a way Egypt in recent times has been a kind of evolution of the meeting for friendship amongst peoples. So I give the floor to Professor Wael Salvatore Farouk, because I understand that Wael means Salvatore in Egyptian.
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Your Excellency. It's greatly significant for me to be here at the United Nations, this place that embodies humanity's dream of unity and peace, to talk about another place that realizes this dream for 1 week every day, every year. To talk about a popular United Nation, and I am glad to think the same way like Professor Weiler, to talk about a popular United Nation that is free from the burden of conflicts, the temptation of private interest, and the misleading ideologies. Meeting Rimini. It's not easy to capture this event in words, because there are no words that can express the million moments of surprise, curiosity, and hope, as well as the millions of hearts beating to the rhythm of joy, harmony, and love. And the millions of eyes that meeting Rimini has opened to a different world that has allowed them to see that self-reflection is achieved through meeting with the other. Did Emilia and her friends who met at a pizzeria more than 30 years ago realize that the word meeting that they have chosen as the title for their summer festival would become a path for knowledge and a new means for discovering one's self and the world? They were simply a group of young people wishing to celebrate and connect with others, and so they choose the simplest and the deepest form. The word meeting does not trap human interaction in any traditional mold or any prejudice. It is not a forum, a conference, a seminar, a festival, or a celebration. A meeting is a state of openness to any event that brings people together, a state that is not determined until after the meeting. Possibly because of this characteristic, meeting Rimini is more responsive to the actual human condition in which the barriers of time and the place collapse, replaced by the more brutal psychological and cultural barriers. A world in which stereotypes dominate and religious fundamentalism has become louder, and the clash of civilization has become the framework of the human activity internationally. In this world, dialogue has become a form of negotiation used to solve conflicts, where the conflicting sides replace confrontation and violence with words. Accordingly, dialogue has become an alternative conflict, aiming to overcome the differences that distinguish one culture from another. As the former former manager of UNESCO has said, in this understanding, there is no difference between a dialogue of civilization and a clash of civilization, because they both come from the same main assumption: difference is evil. The idea of demonization of differences within Arab culture makes the moderate Arab discourse to the West apologetic, aiming to justify the differences from the West as if those differences are a sin that Arabs have committed, or ignores the differences with the West and overlooks them as if they do not exist. As for the other more extremist and widely spread discourse, it relies on differences as well, dividing the world into two homes, the land of Islam and the land of infidelity, using this discourse to justify the desire to clash with the West and to destroy it. But for me, and thanks to a friendship that evolved over many years, I have learned many things from meeting Rimini. Perhaps the most important of which is that differences are the foundation of the dialogue. And this dialogue has to be through a meeting, because in a meeting the individual creates a place in his life for the other and starts to discover him. Difference in this understanding is the foundation of knowledge, and the dialogue is a mechanism used to gain that knowledge. Therefore, I believe neglecting the difference for the sake of dialogue is just as misleading as neglecting the other because of his differences. In our current reality, the belonging of the individual to a spiritual, political, or cultural group often requires him to abandon his differences in order to integrate into the community. But I saw in meeting Rimini a community that encourages each individual to be different and unique, and to discover one's experience and individual path. This occurs because the individual does not classify him or herself by belonging to a group, but rediscovers one's self through participation with the community. The realization of one's differences enhances the person's conviction that he or she has something to contribute. There is no poor person, because every human is unique and capable of giving to others. This awareness of the positive value of difference that I lived in Rimini made me realize the reason for my aversion to participation in formal religious and cultural dialogues. These dialogues have been stripped of their human component. They turn their back to human reality because they ignore the fact that the protagonists are not religion, but believers. Those believers are human living in a reality, and the dialogue should aim to improve the condition of the reality in which they live and practice their beliefs. Only this connection to reality can move us from an imaginary, false communion in faith to a true communion in life. This partnership in life, this faith in the ability of dialogue to change and build, is what allowed the people behind Rimini to undertake without hesitation the adventure of moving from one side of the world to the other, to Cairo. About 2 months period the Egyptian revolution, a new experience was being born in Cairo, an experience that Saad Hagras, the well-known journalist, mentioned about a month after the revolution. He noted that the revolution of Egypt's youth did not surprise him, because less than 2 months before the revolution, those same young people organized the biggest and most successful international meeting for culture and religious dialogue in Egypt, a meeting entitled "Beauty is a Space for Dialogue." Mr. Hagras added, "This name alone made me feel that these young people had a different imagination that could change the reality of Egypt, because beside this unique imagination for dealing with real issues was a will to change them." And so all those young ones worked together in this event, volunteering. There was the doctor who chauffeured the guests in his private car, the judge who ushered people to their chairs, the accountant who prepared the showroom. This is the spirit that has blossomed and produced the revolution in Tahrir Square. It's normal for the Egyptian media to use the word "why" to stir up suspicion of the goals and the intentions in any event in which Egyptians and Westerns, Christians and Muslims collaborate. Conspiracy theories are always there. However, the why that was directed to the organizers and the guests of Meeting Cairo was different. It was a sincere expression of surprise. It was not the why that searches for motives and aims, but a means to know and understand individuals. All those volunteers from all professions and all ages, who were they? Why had we never seen them before? Why had we never felt their presence? Did they really organize this huge event? Where did all of this love and enthusiasm to meet the other in a society that suffers from sectarian intolerance come from? How did these young people move from passive observation to action? How did they work together in such complete harmony? Christians from all communities, Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant, and Muslims from all civil society currents, the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Azhar. These are some of the questions that echoed in the Egyptian media, which covered the event in 37 full pages in different newspapers and more than 4 hours on national, public, and private television channels. For me, these questions are the biggest success achieved by Meeting Cairo, because they express a moment of an awakening of consciousness, of self-discovery, and the true grasp of reality. In their conversation with the media after the meeting, some of the volunteers said, "For the first time, I feel like I am an important person who can have an effect on real life." Another said, "I don't know what I am going to do now, but I will not live on the margins of life anymore." After the meeting, many of the young people understood that they had not participated in the meeting for dialogue or to display Egyptian civility, but because they were answering an internal need, curiosity, and the questioning where that needs most important manifestations. Yes, meeting Cairo was a precursor of the revolution, because it was the space in which young people discovered the meaning of their existence and regain the trust in their ability to enact change. After they had realized that their dreams were not so distant because they themselves were an incarnation of these dreams. Many wrote about the Egyptian revolution, about the poverty, the injustice, the violence that made the people's anger exceed all bounds. But as an Egyptian who lived through this revolution and what was before it, I know that those were not its true motivations. The Egyptian revolution was not a revolution of anger, but a revolution of faith. Because the only thing that changed in Egyptians and stood behind the success of the revolution was their belief in their ability to enact change. They believed in freedom and justice, and this faith is what defeated the million police officers protecting the Mubarak regime. The only thing that stood between Egyptians and their freedom was their belief in it, because all that it takes for the ideal to become a lived, tangible reality is faith. The undefeatable power of faith, trust in the human being and its ability to find meaning for its life, the sheer humanity of truth that makes it practicable, reality, rationalism, beauty and friendship as a path to knowledge, and the discovery of the self and the other. All of these things are the vocabulary of my experience in meeting Rimini, and are the same things I witnessed embodied in Tahrir Square. For the meeting in Tahrir Square between the different elements of Egyptian society brought down the barriers of suspicion and fear and put an end to the stereotyped conflict that almost engulfed the society days before the revolution when the church of Alexandria was bombed. In Tahrir, it was normal to see a girl with crucifix hanging from her neck, giving water for ablution to a bearded man before prayer, or a Christian mass being held surrounded by Muslims from every side, repeating with their Christian brothers, Amin. The Egyptian revolution represented a unique cultural transformation of the Arab mind. It is the first event of such magnitude in this world to break the borders between traditional reality and the virtual world. Or to say more precisely, the first event to build bridges between both worlds. Using Facebook to call for and to prepare this revolution was not merely an indication of the revolution's young leaders' proficiency with the tools of this age. Rather, it reveals a new reality through which humanity is living today, a reality in which every person enacts the experience of liberation from the shackles of time and place on a daily basis. A new reality in which time and place transform from a frame and a container for human action into a subject for action. An examination of the event of the revolution reveals an urge to regain the human existence that dictatorship had taken away by divesting time and the place of their neutrality and generality, and hence the capacity to take ownership of them. The martyrdom of hundreds of young people defending Tahrir Square was nothing less than an attempt to preserve the symbolic space for existence by concentrating, and I don't say reducing, by concentrating all of Egypt in Tahrir Square to transform its small area into a huge mass of human action and existence. Likewise, giving names to the days of the revolution removed from the continuity of time and striking them like we strike a coin in the name of the rightful honors, the revolutionaries. The feeling of ownership of the square brought out the best in Egyptians. Egyptians who share blame for the squalor of Cairo's street were present in Tahrir Square in the millions, and yet you would not find a shred of paper on the ground, nor one incident of sexual harassment. The religious symbols that had been used to exclude the other began to proclaim solidarity between Muslims and the Christians. Yes, I am here because I am with you for the cause of freedom. In this way, taking ownership of time and the place was a necessary prelude to ousting the dictatorship. That's why it was not strange for the revolution to reduce its demands to one word, one verb in the end: leave, get out of our time, our place, and our world. The dictator who continually imposed his authority on the here and the now, using symbols and quotes from the past, was stripped of his control over the here and the now by thousands of jokes that mocked him, only adding to this mockery when he confronted the Facebook with horses and the camels. The most important achievement of the revolution was to liberate the Arab mind from the dream of the just tyrant. Many have found fault with the revolution because it has no leader. However, this is its most important distinction. The only thing that led the millions who filled the streets was their faith in freedom. They realized that they derived their power from their numbers, much like the virtual world where a page does not gain its power from its administrator or admin, but from the number and the mass of people who join it. In this way, charisma moves from the individual to the community. The Egyptian revolution succeeded in the end because it was committed to what I call the physics of meeting and the truth, according to Luigi Giussani, the spiritual godfather of meeting Rimini, who emphasized in every page of his books that truth without human experience, without human meaning, without human presence is a false truth, because the truth is a biased human position, while neutral facts are inhuman. The true is an event in which human action is inseparable from human value. The humanity of truth in today's postmodern world is a mean of escape from the demagogy of ideology and the domination of false stereotypes. The Meeting Cairo group was founded after being guests at Meeting Rimini and worked with its experience in dialogue and the friendship between people last October. I think you have a book inside your file with the pictures of Meeting Cairo. This group is composed of hundreds of young people and a number of intellectuals, university professors, and judges who have lived the experience of love built on the concept of meeting. This small group of people that is no more than half-year-old was transformed into a positive power and source of energy that interacts with the real conditions in Egypt. After the attack on the Church of Alexandria at the beginning of 2011, exactly at the New Year's Eve, we used the weapon of beauty and art in the face of violence. The celebration of Christian Islamic hymns was the icon that official media kept rebroadcasting before the revolution on all the official television channels. And when the revolution started, the Meeting Cairo group was on the front line and participated in all its events. After the revolution succeeded, the Meeting Cairo group did not stop participating in building a new Egypt. Perhaps the biggest of its initiatives was the conference held 2 weeks ago on May 7th with 5,000 liberal participants representing all the cities, villages, and the districts of Egypt, from Aswan to Alexandria. The conference aimed to build one liberal front that will affirm the civilian nature of the Egyptian state and coordinate between the liberal political parties and powers in the upcoming parliamentary and presidential elections. Finally, everything this group has undertaken, even its very existence, is nothing if not a result of Meeting Rimini, through which we have lived the experience of liberation from stereotypes and prejudice. We have rediscovered ourselves and restored our faith in our ability to do and to change before we release our dreams for change. True dialogue is nothing less than a shared experience that cannot be lived without others. True dialogue is an ongoing project of building the self and the world. That's why I believe that the list of what Meeting Rimini has offered the world is that it gave the dreamers a place in reality. My friends, founders and makers of this world, my love for you is mixed with jealousy and joy, because no one can find anything better to which to dedicate his life than what you are doing. God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Farouk. I think that we are coming to an end to this presentation, and we know that there is another meeting after this one, so we have other friends waiting outside to come and have their own meeting here. But before concluding and inviting everybody to continue the discussion regarding Rimini in the reception that is going to take place immediately after the closure of this meeting at the ground floor of this building, let me first of all thank Professor Guarnieri and the friends, Professor Weiler, Professor Farouk, for being here. Thank the friends from Meeting Rimini for coming here and for giving this opportunity to explain at the United Nations what the Meeting Rimini is. The Italian mission has been happy to be instrumental to organize this presentation. We hope that this has created that amount of curiosity towards this initiative, and that friends from New York will be able to join this initiative in August in Rimini. Again, thank you to all who have been able to spend these hours with us here today, and please join us for this reception so that we can continue to have a discussion on this initiative. Thank you very much.